you hear something like this, you feel bad because he accepted accountability for it.
Paul George just got slapped with a massive 25-game ban for a banned substance, but that is just the surface level headline. Here is the shadow game nobody is talking about. The word on the street is that the FBI didn't just intervene. They dropped the heaviest hammer in Bachelor of Arts history, triggering rumors about Paul George exposing a web that connects an active head coach, a current roster player, and 4 different mafia families in a scandal so deep and twisted that insiders are whispering this is only the first domino to fall. Let's talk about the suspension itself. On January 31st, 2026, the Bachelor of Arts dropped a nuclear bombshell that absolutely nobody saw coming. We are talking about Philadelphia 76ers forward Paul George, a 9-time All-Star, arguably one of the smoothest two-way killers of his generation. This is a man earning $51.7 million this season alone, suddenly suspended 25 games without a dime of pay for violating the terms of the Bachelor of Arts anti-drug program. There was no warning, no slow buildup, no sources say leaks beforehand, just a cold league statement that hit the internet like a runaway freight train, leaving every basketball fan from Philly to LA scrambling to figure out what the hell just happened. The end. Bachelor of Arts didn't specify the substance involved, because of course they didn't. They never do. The official release was icy, corporate, and brutally to the point. Just a 25-game gavel slam that would sideline him until March 25th, 2026, leaving him eligible for only the final 10 regular season games, basically throwing the Sixers to the Wolves right in the thick of a brutal playoff race. But here is where it gets interesting. Paul George didn't hide in a bunker. Within hours, he fired back with a statement to ESPN's Shams Charania that completely flipped the script and steered the narrative down a road nobody saw coming. Paul George put it all out there, saying, "Over the past few years, I have discussed the importance of mental health. And in the course of recently seeking treatment for an issue of my own, I made the mistake of taking an improper medication. I take full responsibility for my actions and apologize to the Sixers organization, my teammates, and the Philly fans for my poor decision-making during this process. I am focused on using this time to make sure that my mind and body are in the best condition to help the team when I return." He pinned it on mental health, and that changes everything. And look, let's be real. This isn't some guy who just started using mental health as a buzzword yesterday to get out of trouble. This is somebody who has put his name, his reputation, and his own bank account behind the cause for years. Go back to 2020, George was one of the first Bachelor of Arts stars to rip the bandage off and openly discuss his battles with anxiety inside the bubble, back when isolation was breaking guys left and right. In 2022, he doubled down and went even further. He partnered with BetterHelp to donate up to $3 million in free therapy services, working alongside legends like Venus Williams to smash the stigma around asking for help. He even penned an op-ed in USA Today, admitting he used to feel like Superman before realizing that even superheroes need professional backup. So when PG says this suspension is tied to mental health treatment, there is a legitimate, paper-trailed track record backing up every single syllable. This isn't PR spin. This is a man who has been in the trenches fighting this specific fight for half a decade. Now, looking at the rule book specifically, Article 63 of the Collective Bargaining Agreement, a 25-game suspension usually screams first-time offense for specific hard substances. It is distinct from marijuana, which was fully decriminalized in the 2023 Bachelor of Arts and isn't even on the testing sheet anymore. And it is distinct from repeat violations, which escalate fast, 55 games for a second strike and a lifetime banishment for a third. Experts who study the fine print believe the penalty likely involves a prohibited therapeutic medication, think antidepressants, anxiety meds, or ADHD, pills that contained a banned ingredient, which lines up perfectly with his story. Players can apply for therapeutic use exemptions if they just tell the league beforehand. George apparently skipped that step, and that single tiny administrative screw-up cost him absolutely everything. The financial hit, it wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic and immediate. George forfeited roughly $1.7 million, that is $469,692 per game, from the second year of his 4-year, $212 million deal with Philly. That is generational wealth evaporated in a heartbeat. But hold on, because here comes the twist that is almost funny if it wasn't so cynical. That lost salary, it actually saved the 76ers from a business perspective. ESPN capologist Bobby Marks pointed out that the suspension handed the team over $5 million in luxury tax relief, positioning them just 1 point. $3 million over the tax apron, potentially giving them room to make strategic moves at the trade deadline without blowing up the roster. The Sixers might actually walk out of this mess with a cleaner balance sheet than they had before the bad news broke. Talk about failing upward. On the hardwood, though, the pain is real, but maybe, just maybe, survivable. The Sixers were 16-11 with George this season and 11-10 without him. It's not a cliff dive, but George was averaging 16 points, 5 boards, and nearly 4 assists, while shooting 38.2% from deep. He was the floor spacer that let Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey breathe. Without him, the paint gets crowded and the driving lanes choke up. Stephen A. Smith laid out the dilemma perfectly. If you are a Sixer fan, you have been disappointed before, but this one stings different. Let's look at the brutal reality here. The guy barely touched the hardwood last year, and now we're staring down the barrel of another massive stretch of empty locker room stalls. And keep in mind, this disaster is unfolding right after offseason knee surgery and a start to the season that was basically a no-show. You've got the crew on First Take screaming about it, highlighting that same old tired pattern of unavailability that's been haunting Paul George ever since he touched down in Philadelphia. But even amidst the shouting match, Stephen A. Smith had to pause and admit there might be a twisted kind of silver lining buried in all this forced vacation time. Think about it. If George actually stays in the lab during this suspension, grinds on his conditioning, and keeps the rust off, he could stroll back in for the final 10 games looking fresher than anyone else on the floor. We're talking about an Eastern Conference that is wide open right now. Nobody has claimed the throne. It's a total free-for-all. In that chaos, a fully rested, recharged Paul George isn't just a nice-to-have. He's the difference between getting bounced in the first round and making a legitimate, legacy-defining run at the title. But hold on, because we need to zoom out. This isn't just about missed jump shots. This suspension dropped at the absolute worst possible moment for the NBA's public image. We are talking about a league that was already gasping for air, drowning in arguably the biggest integrity crisis the sport has ever seen. The FBI had just kicked the doors down on a gambling scandal that makes your average betting controversy look like a friendly game of checkers. We're talking about a web involving an active head coach, a current star player, the mob, and criminal schemes that swindled victims out of tens of millions of dollars. Let's take you back to the day the bomb dropped. October 23rd, 2025. The FBI holds a press conference in New York City that absolutely froze the sports world in its tracks. FBI Director Kash Patel steps up to the mic, looking like he's about to declare war, flanked by a small army of prosecutors, NYPD brass, and Homeland Security agents. He announces a historic arrest sweep, one of those moments that fundamentally shatters how every single fan looks at the game of basketball. He told us point blank, this isn't just gambling. This is a rigged operation, an illegal enterprise that has been rotting the sport from the inside out for years. The feds didn't just knock on a few doors. They executed a coordinated takedown across 11 states, slapping handcuffs on over 30 individuals in a case that is still very much alive and kicking. Think about the scale of that. Over 30 people in cuffs in a single morning. A dragnet stretching from coast to coast. And the names caught in the net? They weren't small fries. Chauncey Billups, Hall of Famer, Finals MVP, head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. Terry Rozier, starting guard for the Miami Heat. And then you have Damon Jones, former player turned coach, who was allegedly double dipping, getting his hands dirty in both criminal operations at the same time. All three of them dragged into custody before breakfast, part of a headline that hit the league like a freight train. Prosecutors laid it out. 2 interconnected federal investigations exposing the most brazen, fearless corruption the NBA has ever had to stomach. The first operation, they called it Operation Nothing But Bet. You can't make this stuff up. This was the insider scheme, the one that drives a dagger right into the heart of competition. It makes you question every play you see. 6 defendants charged with wire fraud and money laundering. Their crime? Using secret, non-public NBA intel to place fraudulent prop bets that couldn't lose. We're talking about the holy grail of information. Confidential injury reports, lineup shifts, rest days, and game plans that nobody outside the locker room should know. This sensitive info was being spoon-fed to a network of associates who hammered the sportsbooks, betting hundreds of thousands of dollars on the under. They knew exactly what was coming. They bet that specific players would score fewer points, grab fewer boards, and hand out fewer assists than Vegas expected. And guess what? They won. Over and over again. It's easy to win when you read the script before the movie starts. Between December 2022 and March 2024, these guys ran the table. It was a calculated scheme to defraud, leveraging inside access to manipulate the market on NBA athletes and teams. They knew when guys were going to sit out future games, or, and this is the kicker, when they would pull themselves out of a game early with a fake injury or a sudden illness. And that brings us to Terry Rozier, who was allegedly sitting right at the center of this mess. Flashback to March 23rd, 2023. Rozier is suiting up for the Charlotte Hornets, but he's allegedly already told his circle the fix is in. The plan? Start the game, run around a bit, and then bow out early with a phantom injury. His crew, including his childhood buddy Terry Rozier, didn't hesitate. They smashed the under with more than $200,000 in wagers before tip-off. Rozier goes out there, clocks about 9 minutes of cardio, claims foot discomfort, and walks off the court. Game over. He never came back. Those bets cashed instantly. Big money. And according to the feds, that cash was delivered straight to Rozier's front door, where they literally sat around and counted the stacks together. But here's where it gets almost comical. A doctor went back and analyzed the game tape frame by frame. Result? Absolutely nothing. Zero. There wasn't a single awkward step, twist, or grimace from Rozier the entire time he was on the floor. He played until just under 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Look at the tape. He's driving the lane, cutting, planting. No hobbling, no grabbing the foot, nothing that even hints at an injury. The guy is sprinting up and down the court looking like he's in mid-season form. No limp, no signal to the trainer. He just goes to the bench and sits there for nearly 5 minutes of real time, looking completely chilled out. There is zero urgency, no grimace of pain. He isn't even looking at his supposedly broken foot. Then suddenly maybe he remembered the script. He takes his shoe off right before the quarter ends. The timing isn't just suspicious. It's practically shouting a confession. You can see him here on the bench, out of the game with 2 minutes and 12 seconds left in the first, looking like the only thing he's worried about is how he's going to spend that cut of the money. If your foot is throbbing, if you're actually hurting, common sense says you're waving down a medic, right? You know the drill. You're flagging down the athletic trainers, having them probe the ankle, ice it down, grimace a little. But nope, nothing. Rozier is just chilling on the bench, looking totally unbothered, like he's at a day spa. We're talking crunch time here, 1:40 left on the clock, and he's statuesque. He's sitting there in complete comfort, not a single wince, not even a flinch toward this supposedly agonizing, unbearable foot injury. And this is the nightmare scenario the doctor laid out, the part that should send a cold shiver down the spine of every sports fan. Medical staffs are handcuffed. They cannot objectively prove a fake. You can run an MRI, you can run every scan in the book, and it can come back pristine, completely clean, and a player can still scream about phantom pain. There are legitimate conditions where the camera sees nothing, but the agony is real. So when a superstar looks the team doc in the eye and says, "I'm done, I can't go," the staff is held hostage. They have absolutely no choice but to fold and take the player at their word. That is the protocol. And that right there, that is the golden ticket. The loophole these schemes were engineered to exploit with surgical precision. It's the perfect crime. An athlete claims he's hurting, says the body won't cooperate, and the medical team has to bench him. No questions asked. The game is rigged from the inside out. Then you've got Damon Jones, playing the role of the ultimate inside man. He wasn't just watching, he was pulling the strings on the betting side. The guy was allegedly funneling top secret intel on the Lakers' heavy hitters, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, feeding the Sharks before the public even caught a whiff of the news. He's whispering to his crew exactly when the stars are sitting out or playing limited minutes. That is insider trading on steroids. Check this out. In one case, a massive $100,000 wager gets dropped based on Jones's tip that Anthony Davis was clipped, limited by injury. But here's the kicker. The bet actually lost. So these sharks turn around, furious, and demand a refund from Jones like it's a bad meal at a restaurant. You can't make this stuff up. But hold on, because that betting scandal, that was just the appetizer. The main course was way uglier. Enter Operation Royal Flush. This wasn't just gambling, this was underground high-stakes warfare rigged with gadgetry that makes James Bond look like an amateur. We are talking rigged shufflers that scanned every single card in the deck, beaming that data wirelessly to a ghost operator offsite in real time. Instant omniscience. X-ray tables peeking at face-down cards. Special contact lenses and glasses designed to spot invisible markings. It's absolute insanity. They had micro cameras buried in the light fixtures, sensors in the chip trays, feeding everything into cold hard algorithms. The level of sophistication here, it wasn't just cheating, it was an industrial scale slaughter of the odds. And the bait? The so-called face cards. This included the defendant Chauncey Billups, former NBA royalty and current head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. Right there beside him, Damon Jones, another former league vet turned con artist. Here is the tragedy. The victims, the fish had no clue they were swimming in a shark tank. Every soul in that room, from the dealer to the legends, was in on the grift. Billups and Jones were the shiny objects. The celebrity lures used to make wealthy marks feel like they'd made it to the big leagues. You're sitting across from a finals MVP. It feels real. It feels electric. It feels like a once-in-a-lifetime story you'll tell your grandkids. Instead, they were getting systematically stripped to the bone by a room full of predators. The damage was catastrophic. Total losses topped $7 million, with one poor guy dropping $1.8 million in a single night. Gone. And who was backing this circus? 4 of the 5 infamous New York Mafia families, the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crews. Prosecutors called this alliance historic. We haven't seen families collaborate on this scale since the formation of the Mafia Commission in the 1930s. It's like the Avengers of organized crime. Each family had a specific job to do: tech procurement, venue management, strategy, muscle, a corporate structure for robbery, and when the fish couldn't pay up, the mob didn't send a strongly worded email. They went old school threats, intimidation, and gunpoint robberies to settle the tab. The craziest part? The truth was out there 2 full years before the feds kicked down the doors. Poker pro Matt Berkey practically drew a map of the entire setup on episode 277 of the Only Friends podcast way back in August 2023. He laid it out. There was this game, started in LA, moved to Vegas for a few nights, all built around Chauncey Billups. His source told him, "Look, I know the game earns, but I'm telling you 100% it's on the up and up." Famous last words. That clip went nuclear after the arrest dropped. Over 767,000 views on X alone. The internet detectives were on it. Berkey's buddies got crushed in those games. They knew the fix was in, but what are you going to do? You can't fight a war against NBA legends and the mob. And just when you thought it couldn't get any messier during the presser to expose this whole ring, the U.S. attorney let something slip that absolutely broke the internet. He starts reading the indictment, and suddenly he drops the bomb-specific examples of defendants profiting from illegal bets on NBA games. We are breaking down the absolute implosion involving players from the Charlotte Hornets, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Los Angeles Lakers, and, get this, the Toronto Rangers. You heard me right, the Toronto Rangers. Not the Raptors, the Rangers. Apparently, this scandal is so messy, it's rewriting geography and sports franchises in real time. In the dead center of the single most explosive NBA controversy of the modern era, one man didn't just light a match, he accidentally nuked the entire landscape. So, where does the dust settle right now? We need to go through this frame by frame because the fallout has been just as chaotic, confusing, and catastrophic as the arrests themselves. Nothing about this nightmare has been straightforward, and the shockwaves just keep cracking the foundation of the league. Let's start with the defense. All 3 of these NBA heavyweights have looked the judge in the eye and pleaded not guilty. Terry Rozier walked into court on December 8th, 2025, entered his plea, and was cut loose on a $3 million bond, putting his Florida mansion up as collateral while handing over his passport like a grounded teenager. The court put him on a tight leash. Absolutely zero gambling and a strict no contact order with any co-defendants or witnesses, basically. Don't talk to anyone. His legal team didn't wait around. They filed a motion to dismiss back in December, essentially claiming, hey, his involvement here is barely a blip on the radar, arguing it wasn't enough to stick a conspiracy charge on him. Then you have Chauncey Billups, who pleaded not guilty on November 24th, posting a massive $5 million bond secured by his Colorado home, a document painfully signed by both his wife and his daughter. The Trailblazers didn't hesitate. They suspended him on the spot, handing the keys to the franchise over to assistant Tiago Splitter to steer the sinking ship for the rest of the season. It got real for Billups fast. The man literally sold his Oregon home in December 2025, seemingly preparing for a long, expensive winter. Right in the thick of it, Damon Jones entered his not guilty plea on November 6th, securing his freedom on a $200,000 bond backed by his parents, facing those same suffocating restrictions on gambling and organized crime connections. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the gavel comes down on these dual conspiracy charges, every single one of them is staring down the barrel of up to 40 years in a federal cell. But then, on February 2nd, 2026, an independent arbitrator dropped a bombshell ruling that stunned the league and set a legal precedent that's going to haunt the NBA for decades. Against all odds, Rozier won his salary war against the NBA and the Miami Heat. Here is the breakdown of that insanity. When Rozier got slapped with the cuffs, the Heat put him on leave and tried to freeze his entire $26.6 million salary. That was the final year of his 4-year, $96.2 million bag, and the team shoved it into escrow, effectively trying to leave him high and dry without a paycheck. But the National Basketball Players Association came off the top rope, arguing that under the collective bargaining agreement, you can't just stop paying a guy. They pointed out that unpaid leave is strictly for heinous acts like domestic violence or child abuse, not for federal gambling charges, no matter how ugly the headlines look. And the arbitrator looked at the rulebook and sided with the union. Every single penny of that $26.6 million was ordered to be released immediately. That ruling sent a shiver down the spine of every owner in the league, because if Rozier gets his full bag while facing federal conspiracy charges and sitting on his couch, what happens when the next scandal hits? Billups, on the other hand, is out in the cold with absolutely no parachute. As a coach, he doesn't have the ironclad protection of the players' union, meaning he risks torching his entire $7 million salary with zero legal ground to claw it back. The reaction inside the basketball world was raw, emotional, and completely fractured. But over on Times Inside the NBA asterisk, Charles Barkley was visibly shaking with anger and let it all hang out. I know all the players involved here, and I am not going to sit in this chair and be a hypocrite about the life. I'm a homeboy who gambles, Ernie. Let's just be real about it. You know, we bet it. We bet on teams, we played cards, we played spades, we talked trash, but even with all that, every single year the league gave us strict forums on exactly what not to do. It is one of those simple rules. If somebody asks you if a certain player is active, you shut your mouth and say no. So all these guys knew exactly what was at stake, and honestly, I am just ashamed that they put themselves, their families, and the entire NBA in this compromised position. Kenny Smith tried to play devil's advocate, bringing some nuance to the table by pointing out that gambling is a legitimate addiction that hijacks logic, regardless of your bank account or background. He argued that addiction makes people make decisions that make zero sense, no matter how rich or famous they are. But Chuck wasn't hearing a word of it. He cut that excuse off at the knees. Man, shut that down immediately. This ain't got nothing to do with damn gambling addiction. This has nothing to do with addiction. These dudes are just stupid. You want to know why? Because under no circumstances can you fix basketball games. Under zero circumstances. Look, I love to gamble, but the notion like Rozier making $26 million, him betting, giving people inside info, taking himself out of games, how much is he really going to benefit from tanking his own performance to hit the under? The man is making $26 million. The math just doesn't add up. Colin Cowherd came in from a different angle on his show, dropping a history lesson to remind everyone that corruption in sports is as old as the Roman chariot races. He rattled off the greatest hits of shame. Tim Donaghy fixing NBA games from the referee position. He brought up Henry Hill and the Lucchese crime family orchestrating the Boston College point shaving scheme in the 70s, the ASU investigation, and his own days covering UNLV in Vegas, where the notorious Richard the Fixer Perry was literally caught in a hot tub with the players. His point was razor sharp. Don't get precious and naive about this. It's been happening forever, but you need to be grateful when the cockroach gets found, because that is the only way you protect the shield. But even the cynical cowherd admitted he was completely blindsided by one specific name on the indictment list. When I woke up this morning and saw Chauncey Billups' name, my jaw hit the floor. I would never have guessed Chauncey. He was always the adult in the room, smart, heady, the ultimate professional. Step back for a second and look at the absolute firestorm engulfing the NBA right now. It is total chaos. First, you have Paul George suspended over a drug violation tied to mental health meds, a deeply personal battle that somehow got dragged into the public spotlight. Then there is Terry Rozier, staring down federal conspiracy charges for allegedly faking injuries just to cash in on prop bets. That is a whole new level of hustling. And it gets even wilder. Chauncey Billups is accused of helping the mafia shark wealthy poker players out of millions. Is this the NBA or a Scorsese movie? Damon Jones is caught in the crossfire of both schemes, and the FBI is at the podium warning everyone that this investigation is still red hot and far from over. The legal hammer is about to drop on all 34 defendants at the next hearing. We are talking March 4th, 2026, with the judge pushing for a full trial by September. The clock is ticking, and the tension is suffocating. It is so big that even Congress is crashing the party, launching oversight at the highest levels. The House and Senate are demanding answers on betting policies, basically dragging the league into the principal's office for a serious grilling. Behind the scenes, the NBA is in panic mode, firing off memos to every team to tighten up injury reports and betting safeguards immediately. Commissioner Adam Silver had to face the cameras and apologize for this train wreck, vowing to fix the game's integrity. Good luck with that, Adam. This story is developing fast. Smash one of the cards on your screen right now to dive deeper into the madness. You do not want to miss what comes next.